Good morning, sunshines. Happy Monday. Welcome back. Tuning in from London once again. We are here with a fresh Monday morning sunrise chat on Room for Sunshine. As I'm looking at myself right now in the recording, I realize I look like an abominable snowman. So I don't know why I'm sharing that, but it feels relevant to share. So that's, if you're not watching, I am in all white. Anyways, it is a beautiful Monday morning here in London, my last moments in this city, which is sad because I love it here. But onward we go. Oh, okay. Let's not break the Airbnb. Okay. I'm in one of those like travel moods. I don't know if that's a thing, but I feel like it's a thing, a travel mood when you're you've been out on the road, you have no sense of time, of home, of where you're going to eat your next meal, and everything's just sort of in the air. And my brain is included in that. So bear with me here, but we are talking about something very simple. We're going to finish touching on this theme that we actually started on Thursday, setting boundaries, keeping boundaries, why we need boundaries, how to have boundaries. It's such a scary sounding word, I think a little bit. Like when I think of a boundary, I think of there is some loud traffic outside. I think of like a wall that is blocking something. And I don't want to look at it as a wall. I want to look at it as something that we do to protect ourselves in whatever way that needs to be protected. And so on Thursday, we talked about why we need to set boundaries. And ultimately, boundaries are a form of self-respect. You need to set boundaries in order to respect yourself. Because if you're someone who has no boundaries and you're just fully open, odds are you're probably going to get taken advantage of or pushed around or lose your sense of identity. So boundaries are really just a way of us understanding what we need in order to function well and operate in a way that is authentic to us, regardless of what's happening around us. So the why ultimately is self-respect. We set these boundaries for self-respect. And I have found that there are 3 key steps to setting a boundary. And I've learned these through failure and success of setting my own boundaries. And the first step to setting any boundary is understanding what the boundary is and why you need it. This might seem straightforward, and it can be, but it also can be very challenging because sometimes I know for myself, like, I don't know where to start. I go, I am so exhausted from sitting and having all of these coffees with people who wanted to have coffee with me. And then I realize, I'm too exhausted. I'm overworked. So something has to change because I've lost my sense of peace. I've lost my sense of grounded energy because I am giving and overexerting my energy. So in that situation, I recognize, okay, the only way for me to actually start to find peace is by doing less. So I need to have less coffee dates. This is like such a weird thing, but coffee dates, in any job, I think for the most part, like that's how we get to know people. And being a yoga teacher is no different. People want to sit with you after and hear about your life and hear about, a work opportunity. And anyone who I'm sure has been in an office before has had this where people want to line up meetings with you, or younger people want to learn from you, or older people want something from you. And next thing you know, your week is filled with work drinks and work coffees, and you have zero time for yourself. So if you're like me, the why is to protect my energy because I am giving too much. So I know, okay, I need to try and figure out what the new acceptable amount of coffee dates in a week are where I still have time for myself. So step number 1 is just understanding why you need the boundary and what the boundary is. So what I decided to do was say, when I said yes, when I would agree to doing a coffee with somebody, I would say, I only have X amount of minutes. I only have 30 minutes. I only have an hour, but I would love to sit down with you. So that was the boundary. So I was like, cool, got it. Step number 2 is asking or placing the boundary. And this can be the hardest part because normally when we are setting a boundary, it's not just you to you, it's potentially you to somebody else. So it's something that you are confirming with another being, and that might be confrontational, that might be a little scary, it might be embarrassing. There could be an emotion associated with setting the boundary. So with this step, I have found that asking for what you want is a sign of strength. And some people will be able to receive it. Some people will not. But that brings me to step 3, and then we'll go back to step 2, which is holding strong to your boundary. This was also a hard step for me to learn because I was a pushover. I wanted to make other people happy, or I honestly didn't even realize that it was taking a toll on myself. I was just like, okay, whatever. I like this person that I'm sitting with. I'll sit with them for an extra hour and a half. But then I would get home and I would be like, oh my God, I am exhausted. That was an overextension of what I had to give. So step number 3 is just honoring for yourself the boundary that you've put in place. And sometimes that might mean leaving something that you're still enjoying, or it might mean walking away from something when it feels like a weird time to walk away. But it's another way of showing yourself that same self-respect. It's a way of saying, I placed this boundary here for a reason and I'm going to see it through. So going back to number 2, placing the boundary. Ultimately, this is for you to figure out on your own of what is the language that I need to use. What I have found is that normally I will say, hey, I would love to do this thing. However, in order to honor my own needs, I only have X amount of time. Or, hey, I'm only able to spend this much on dinner, or I'm only able to spend this much time on the project, or I only have the means to do this because of this. And as long as you're keeping it to yourself and what you need for you, however the other person responds is for them to deal with, but that is all you can do. And then again, once we understand why we're setting the boundary, actually do the act of setting the boundary and see the boundary through, we are practicing self-respect. And that's a form of self-love. And that's a form of taking care of yourself. And that's a form of honoring you so that you can be a better version of you. And this comes with a lot of practice. I have to practice this on a daily basis. But this Monday morning, I would encourage you to find one boundary that needs to be set in place. That could be with a roommate. Hey, I really need you to clean up the dishes before I get home because this is something that we had agreed upon, or because I'm having people over and it stresses me out. Or, hey, I really need you to be off the phone at this time because it's loud and distracting my sleep. Or, hey, whatever the boundary is, understand why you're setting it, actively set it with your words, and then see it through. Boundary setting. It's really good for you. It's good for all of us. So that is it this Monday morning. Set a boundary, practice doing it. It can be very small. It can be just telling your barista, hey, I only want a third of the cup filled with the milk. And the barista might get annoyed, but that's for them to deal with. It's your $7 coffee. You should have it the way you want it. My name's Alyssa, tuning in here from London, finding some small, simple ways to enhance and brighten our lives however we can, because the sun isn't always shining, but we got to do our best. It is actually shining here right now, but we got to do our best to find ways to brighten our lives and bring more ease and joy and bliss into our everyday. Thanks so much for tuning in. I will see you Thursday, next time on Room for Sunshine.